Millionaire paid for a beggar to have his child. Months later, when he opened a test result, he deeply regretted his decision. The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows down the busy streets. Iris, a young woman with disheveled hair and tired eyes, huddled in her usual corner, in a small alley between two shops. Her thin body trembled slightly under the thin, torn blanket as she watched the constant flow of people passing by, all seeming to have a place to go, a purpose. The noise of the city seemed amplified, each sound a cruel reminder of her loneliness. One day I'll get out of this situation, but how if no one even looks me in the eyes? Am I still invisible to the world? Iris mumbled to herself, her voice hoarse. The smell of hot food wafting from the restaurant next door made Iris's stomach growl painfully. She hadn't eaten for 2 days, surviving only on the water she could grab from a broken faucet in the nearby alley. Her eyes wandered the street, searching for any sign of compassion, but finding only indifference. A group of teenagers passed by, laughing and chatting animatedly, and Iris felt a pang of envy and loneliness. She remembered a time when she too laughed like that, carefree and happy. It seemed a lifetime ago. Remember when you had dreams, Iris? Now, your biggest dream is a hot meal and a safe place to sleep, she asked herself, a bitter smile on her lips. Hey, you there! How many times do I have to say it? You can't stay here! A gruff voice interrupted her thoughts. It was the owner of a shop, a burly man with a dirty apron. He approached menacingly. Iris shrank back, trying to appear smaller, invisible. Her heart was racing, familiar fear taking hold. She had been through this before, but it never got any easier. Please, sir, just one more night. It's getting cold and I have nowhere to go. I promise I won't bother anyone. I just need a place to shelter, she pleaded with her trembling voice. The man snorted, his face red with anger. You'll drive my customers away, you stink. Get out now. Isn't it enough that I have to deal with the competition? Now I have to put up with beggars at my door. I'll call the police if you don't leave. He took a step forward, his fists clenched at his sides. Iris felt panic rising in her chest. The police meant trouble, meant being taken away, perhaps to a worse place. With trembling hands, she began gathering her few possessions, the torn blanket, an old backpack with some dirty clothes. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of him, not in front of anyone. One day, someone will see me as a human being. But today is not that day. Will it ever be? Iris thought bitterly, struggling to her feet. Stumbling, Iris left her makeshift shelter, feeling the disapproving stares of the citizens. Her weak legs could barely support her, and she had to lean against the wall to avoid falling. The world spun around her, a confusing mix of lights, sounds, and smells that seemed offensive in their intensity. She took a few uncertain steps, not knowing where to go. The city, which had once seemed so familiar, now presented itself as a hostile and unknown labyrinth. Where do I go now? Maybe it's better to just give up. Who would miss me? Who would even notice that I'm not here anymore? Iris whispered to herself, the despair evident in her voice. That's when she saw him, a tall, well-dressed man in an expensive suit, staggering on the sidewalk across the street. His face was pale, and he seemed to be struggling to breathe. People passed by him, some casting curious glances, but no one stopped to help. Iris hesitated for a moment, torn between her survival instinct and the desire to help someone who appeared to be in distress. For an instant, she saw herself reflected in that stranger, both alone in an indifferent crowd. Hey, sir, are you okay? Do you need help? Please answer me, Iris shouted, her voice louder than she expected. The man turned his head in her direction, their eyes meeting for a brief moment. In that instant, Iris saw something that surprised her. Fear. The same fear she saw reflected in puddles when she looked at her own face. Before she could think twice, Iris was crossing the street, ignoring the angry honks of cars and the curses of impatient drivers. Don't worry, sir. I'll help you. What's your name? Can you tell me what you're feeling? Iris said, approaching the man. The man tried to speak, but was interrupted by a violent bout of pain. Iris held him firmly, surprised by her own strength. She could feel the expensive fabric of his suit under her dirty fingers, a stark contrast to her own situation. The man finally managed to catch his breath enough to mumble a word. Michael. My name is Michael. Please, I need help, he said, his voice weak and halting. Iris felt Michael's weight against her frail body but remained steadfast. The contrast between them could not be greater. She, a dirty, ragged young beggar. He, a middle-aged man wearing a suit that probably cost more than she had ever seen in her life. But in that moment, they were just two vulnerable people on the sidewalk of an indifferent city. Iris looked around, desperate for help, but the citizens continued on their way, some even detouring to avoid the unusual pair. The noise of the city seemed to amplify the urgency of the situation. "Breathe with me, Michael, slowly. That's it. Can you tell me where you're feeling pain? Try to focus on my voice," Iris instructed, her voice surprisingly calm. Michael clutched his chest tightly, his eyes wide with panic. My heart. It feels like it's being crushed. I've never felt anything like this before," he managed to say between gasps. Iris felt a wave of fear course through her body. She wasn't a doctor, barely had a formal education, but she knew this could be serious. Her survival instincts screamed at her to leave that man and run before she was blamed for anything. But a greater force kept her there, determined to help. She thought of all the times she needed help, and no one showed up. "I'm not going to abandon you, Michael. No one deserves to be alone at a time like this," Iris murmured, more to herself than to him. "Someone call an ambulance!" Iris shouted to the crowd, her voice laden with urgency. "Please, this man needs help. Can't you see it's an emergency?" she pleaded, desperate. Finally, some people stopped, their cell phones in hand, but no one made the call. Iris could hear the murmurs. "She's probably trying to rob him. Don't get involved, it could be dangerous." Anger and frustration grew inside her, mixing with a feeling of helplessness she knew all too well. "Are you all blind? A man is dying and you're just watching. What kind of people are you? If it was someone you knew, would you act differently?" Iris cried out, tears of anger in her eyes. As she shouted, Iris gently helped Michael sit down on the ground, his back leaning against the wall of a building. She held his hand, feeling it cold and trembling. The human contact seemed to calm Michael down a bit, and Iris realized how long it had been since she herself had touched someone without fear or distrust. "Stay with me, Michael. Help is coming. Do you have any medication with you? Anything for the pain? Try to remember anything can help now," Iris asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Michael nodded weakly, pointing to the inside pocket of his jacket. With trembling fingers, Iris rummaged through the pocket, feeling strangely invasive as she touched a stranger's belongings. She found a small bottle of pills and carefully took it out. Iris quickly read the label, silently thanking that she knew how to read, a skill many in her situation did not have. "Here, this should help. This will make you feel better, right? It should take effect soon," she said, putting a pill in Michael's mouth and helping him swallow with some water from her battered bottle. The following minutes felt like an eternity. Iris kept talking to Michael, encouraging him to breathe and stay conscious. She told meaningless stories, bad jokes she remembered from her childhood, anything to keep him focused on her and not the pain. Her words flowed endlessly, as if they could create a barrier between Michael and the danger threatening him. "You know, Michael, when I woke up today, I never imagined I'd be saving the life of a man in a suit. Life is funny, isn't it? One moment we're in one situation, the next everything changes," Iris said with a trembling smile. Slowly, color began to return to Michael's face. His breathing stabilized and his expression softened. Iris watched every change closely, fearing the improvement was only temporary. When the ambulance finally arrived, sirens echoing down the street, Michael was already sitting up straighter, looking at Iris with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. The paramedics quickly took over, checking Michael's vital signs and preparing him for transport. Iris stepped back, suddenly aware of her appearance and situation. The moment of connection was passing, and she felt the familiar weight of reality settling back on her shoulders. She turned to leave, feeling her role was over, when she felt a hand grab her wrist. "Wait, don't go yet. What's your name?" "I need to know who saved my life," Michael said, his voice still weak but determined. "Iris, my name is Iris," she replied, surprised by the question and the touch. It had been so long since anyone cared to know her name. Michael smiled, a gesture that transformed his tired face. The gratitude in his eyes was palpable, and Iris felt something inside her warm up, an almost forgotten feeling of being valued. "Iris, you saved my life. Let me thank you properly. Please allow me to buy you a meal. It's the least I can do," he asked with a grateful look. Iris hesitated, years of distrust battling against the hunger roaring in her stomach. She looked into Michael's eyes, searching for any sign of ill intent, but found only sincerity. Still, the idea of accepting help from a stranger went against everything she had learned on the streets. I don't know. You don't owe me anything, really. Anyone would have done the same," Iris stammered, her voice betraying her uncertainty. "But it wasn't just anyone, it was you. Please, Iris. A meal, that's all I ask." "Let me repay your kindness," Michael gently insisted. Iris looked once more at the busy street, at the people now watching them with curiosity. She thought of her makeshift home from which she had been evicted by the store owner, of the constant hunger that was her companion. Maybe, just maybe, this was the universe offering a small reprieve. "Okay, I think a meal would be great." "Thank you, Michael," she finally said, a small smile forming on her lips. The doorbell jingled as Michael and Iris entered the simple diner. The aroma of fresh coffee and fried bacon hung in the air, making Iris's stomach audibly growl. She felt out of place among the formica tables and vinyl booths, acutely aware of the disgusted looks from the other patrons. Michael, still pale but steadier, guided her to a table in the back, away from prying eyes. A middle-aged waitress approached, her nose visibly wrinkling as she caught Iris's scent. "Hey, you folks, we can't serve people like that here. It's against the health code," the waitress exclaimed, looking straight at Michael. "She's with me." "And we'd like 2 daily specials, please, with coffee," Michael replied firmly, his voice laced with authority. The waitress hesitated, looking from Michael to Iris with evident distaste. Iris shrank in her seat, feeling the weight of every gaze upon her. Her dirty, tattered clothes seemed to scream her condition to all around. "Look, mister, we don't want no trouble here. She's messing up the booth. The smell," the waitress insisted, lowering her voice. "The only problem here is a lack of humanity. Now, are you going to serve us, or do I need to speak to the manager?" Michael cut her off, his voice icy. Reluctantly, the waitress walked away to place the order, not without casting one last look of contempt at Iris. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with tension and discomfort. Iris fiddled nervously with the napkin, avoiding Michael's gaze and those of the other patrons. "I'm sorry about this, Iris. You don't deserve to be treated like that," Michael said softly. "I'm used to it. People, they always react that way," Iris mumbled, still not looking up. Michael shook his head, leaning forward. "It shouldn't be like that. Nobody deserves that kind of treatment. How did you end up in this situation?" "If you don't mind telling me, of course," he said, studying Iris's face, which hesitated, years of distrust battling against the desire to unburden herself. Finally, the words began to flow. She spoke of her parents' death in a car accident when she was 16, of how the foster system failed her, of cold nights and hungry days. Michael listened intently, his eyes full of compassion. "It wasn't easy, but I survived. It's what I do best, I guess," Iris concluded, her voice quivering. "You're stronger than you realize, Iris, and kinder than the world deserves," Michael said softly. The arrival of the food interrupted their conversation. The waitress practically slammed the plates down on the table, spilling some coffee on the tablecloth. Iris had to restrain herself from devouring it all at once, savoring each bite as if it were her last. Michael ate more slowly, still watching Iris with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You know," Michael began, setting his fork down, "I could help you get off the streets. I have connections, could get you a job, maybe even a place to stay." Iris froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Why, what's in it for you?" she asked, the distrust evident in her voice. Michael gave a sad smile. "Not everything has a price, Iris. Sometimes people just want to help," he argued, but the drifter frowned. I don't know, it's a lot to take in," Iris stammered, feeling overwhelmed. Suddenly Michael paled, his hand flying to his chest. His face contorted in a grimace of pain, and he began to wheeze. Iris immediately stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Michael, what's wrong? Is it the pain again?" Iris asked, panic evident in her voice. "Worse than before." "Needs hospital," Michael managed to say between gasps. Iris sprang into action, ignoring the shocked and disgusted looks from the other patrons. She slung Michael's arm over her shoulders, supporting most of his weight, and grabbed some cash from the millionaire's pocket and left it on the table as payment for the meal. Together they stumbled out of the diner, leaving a trail of whispers and curious stares in their wake. Out on the sidewalk, Iris frantically looked around for a cab. Traffic was heavy and no cabs in sight. Michael was leaning more heavily against her with each passing second, his breathing growing more labored. "Hold on, Michael. We'll get help. Don't give up now," Iris murmured, half carrying, half dragging him along the sidewalk. "Iris, if anything happens, my card, in a pocket. Use it." Michael gasped. Iris felt a lump in her throat. No, she wouldn't let that happen, not after everything. She waved frantically at the passing cars, yelling for help. Finally, a cab pulled over. "Hospital, hurry!" Iris shouted, helping Michael into the back seat. She turned to the driver, who was eyeing them suspiciously. "Please, it's an emergency," she pleaded. The cab peeled off, merging into the city traffic. Iris held Michael's hand, feeling it cold and clammy. She watched his pain-contorted face, feeling helpless. "Stay with me, Michael. We're almost there." "You're going to be okay," Iris implored, squeezing his hand. "Iris, thank you for everything," Michael whispered, his eyes meeting hers as if saying goodbye. The cab took a sharp turn, and Iris saw the hospital lights drawing near. Her heart hammered, a mixture of fear and hope. As the cab screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance, Iris found herself doing something she hadn't done in years, praying. "Please, please, God, don't take him, not now." "Please help him," she muttered to herself as she helped Michael out of the cab. The automatic emergency doors opened. Immediately, the medical team rushed to attend to them. Iris fell behind, her hands shaking and her heart racing. The antiseptic smell of the hospital invaded her nostrils, bringing painful memories of her last visit to a place like this, years ago. She walked hesitantly to the reception, aware of the disapproving looks she received from patients and staff. I came with the man who just came in. Michael. He was feeling a lot of pain." Iris stammered to the receptionist, who barely looked up from her computer. "Full name?" the receptionist asked dryly. I don't know. I just met him today," Iris admitted, feeling helpless. The receptionist finally looked at Iris, her eyebrows rising in disapproval at seeing her dirty clothes and unkempt appearance. "Take a seat. Someone will come talk to you." "Eventually," she said, her tone making it clear that Iris was not a priority. Iris walked away, finding an isolated seat in the corner of the waiting room. She watched the people around her. Worried families, patients with minor injuries, hurried nurses. Everyone seemed to make a conscious effort not to look in her direction, as if her poverty was contagious. Yet Iris remained there, nervous, waiting for news. The hours dragged on. Iris watched the clock on the wall, counting the minutes, trying to ignore the hunger that was starting to gnaw at her stomach again. She saw patients come and go, families receive good and bad news. No one came to speak to her about Michael. "He's going to be okay. He has to be okay. He's strong," Iris muttered to herself, like a mantra. But an insidious voice in her mind whispered, "What if he dies? What if the last person who was kind to you disappears?" A hospital security guard began circling the waiting room, his eyes narrowing every time he passed Iris. She could feel the tension building, knew it was only a matter of time before she was approached. Finally, after his third round, the guard stopped in front of her. "Ma'am, you can't stay here if you're not a patient or companion," he said, his voice firm but not hostile. "I came with someone. His name is Michael. He's being treated at this hospital," Iris replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The guard frowned, clearly skeptical. "Are you a relative?" "No, but..." "Then you need to leave. This is not a shelter," he argued, grabbing her by the arm to usher her out. Iris felt panic rising in her chest. She couldn't leave, not without knowing if Michael was okay. But before she could protest the gesture, a voice interrupted. "Miss, you came with Mr. Hamilton." Iris turned to see a middle-aged doctor looking at her with curiosity. She nodded quickly, grateful for the interruption. With an irritated sigh, the guard released her arm. Yes, I came with him. How is he? Is he going to be all right?" she asked. The doctor hesitated, looking from Iris to the guard. "Are you related? Do you have any familial ties to the patient?" the doctor asked. "No, I helped him on the street. He fell ill on the street. I just helped him. But I won't leave here until I know news of his condition." The doctor seemed to consider this for a moment before speaking again. "Mr. Hamilton is stable now. We were able to control the situation momentarily, but it may be a serious illness, so he will need care in the coming days and await the results of the tests. However, he is out of danger for now." Iris let out a sigh of relief that she didn't know she was holding. "Thank God," she murmured. "But there's a problem," the doctor continued. "We can't discharge Mr. Hamilton without a companion. His hospital file says he lives alone, and given his medical history, it's not safe to leave him unsupervised for the first 48 hours. Iris blinked, confused. "But what about his family?" she asked. "Apparently, there is no one. Mr. Hamilton mentioned your name, Iris. He asked if you were still here," the doctor replied, a tone of sadness in his voice. Iris felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. Michael had asked for her. He wanted her to stay. The idea was both comforting and terrifying. "I don't have a place to take him, I don't have a home, but I want to help him," Iris stammered, looking at her dirty clothes, at her calloused hands. The doctor gently interrupted her. "Mr. Hamilton said that wouldn't be a problem. He wants to talk to you if you're willing." Iris looked at the security guard, who now seemed uncomfortable, at the doctor waiting patiently, and at her own trembling hands. She thought of Michael, alone in a hospital room needing help. She thought of how he had treated her with dignity when everyone else saw her as trash. "All right, I'll see him," she said finally, her voice finding a strength she didn't know she possessed. "Great, come on, he's waiting for you." The doctor nodded, motioning for her to follow him. As Iris got up to follow the doctor, she couldn't help but think, "What am I getting myself into?" But for the first time in years, that thought came accompanied not by fear, but by a small spark of hope for helping someone. Iris followed the doctor through the sterilized corridors of the hospital, her heart pounding hard against her ribs. The smell of disinfectant and sickness made her stomach churn with nervousness as they approached Michael's room. Iris felt her legs grow heavy, as if they were begging her to turn around and flee. But she continued one step after another, driven by a mixture of desire to help and a sense of duty she hadn't felt in years. "He's awake now, but still weak. Try not to agitate him too much," the doctor said, stopping in front of a closed door. Iris nodded, swallowing hard. I can do this," she muttered to herself, more to convince herself than anything else. Upon entering the room, Iris was immediately struck by the sight of Michael. Lying in the hospital bed, connected to tubes and monitors, he looked much smaller and frailer than the man she'd known just hours before. His eyes, however, lit up when they saw her, a faint smile forming on his pale lips. "Iris, you stayed. I wasn't sure if you would," Michael said, his voice hoarse and low. Iris approached the bed hesitantly, feeling out of place in the sterile environment. I couldn't leave without knowing you were okay," she replied, sincerity in her voice. Michael gestured for her to sit in the chair beside the bed. Iris obeyed, still acutely aware of her disheveled appearance in contrast to the pristine room. For a few moments, they sat in silence, the only sound the steady beeping of the heart monitors. "Iris, I need to ask you something. I know it's a lot, especially considering we barely know each other, but I don't have anyone else to turn to." Michael finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly. Iris felt her heart tighten. "What is it, Michael? What do you need?" Michael took a deep breath, wincing slightly with the effort. "The doctors say they can't discharge me unless I have someone to go home with. I live alone just with staff and, well, as you can see, I don't exactly have a line of people waiting to help me out." Iris felt the weight of Michael's words settle on her. You want me to go with you?" Iris asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded slowly. "I know it's a huge ask. You don't know me, you have no reason to trust me. But Iris, you saved my life twice today. I can't thank you enough for that." Iris felt a swirl of emotions, fear, uncertainty, but also a strange sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She looked down at her calloused hands, her dirty nails, and then back at Michael's hopeful face. "Michael, I don't know if I can. I don't have clean clothes. I have nothing to offer." and going into a stranger's home. Well, on the streets we learn not to do that. I want to help you, but I don't know if I have a place in your world. It's so different from mine, she began, her voice trembling. I understand. I didn't mean to put you in this position. Just forget I asked, okay? Michael replied, the disappointment evident in his voice. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken words and unexplored possibilities. Iris found herself torn between fear of the unknown and the desire to help someone who clearly needed her. She thought of all the nights she'd spent alone on the streets, wishing that someone, anyone, would reach out a hand to help her. What if... Iris began, surprising herself. What if I stayed for just one night, just to make sure you're okay? She asked. Michael's face lit up with hope. You'd do that? Iris, I promise, you'll be safe. I have a guest room, you can lock the door if you want, and tomorrow if you decide to leave, I won't stop you, he pleaded. Iris felt her heart racing. Was she really considering this, going into the home of a man she barely knew? But then she looked into Michael's eyes, saw the sincerity and gratitude in them, and knew her decision was already made. Okay, I'll go with you. But only for one night, to make sure you'll be all right, she said finally, her voice finding a firmness that surprised her. Michael smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his whole face. Thank you, Iris. You have no idea what this means to me. Minutes later, after the doctor discharged the patient who promised to return for further tests, Iris and Michael hailed a taxi headed for his home. The taxi wound through the tree-lined streets of an affluent neighborhood, each house larger and more imposing than the last. Iris stared out the window, her eyes wide at the opulence she'd never imagined seeing up close. Next to her, Michael rested, still pale but visibly more relaxed to be out of the hospital. The car finally pulled up to an ornate wrought-iron gate, and Iris felt her heart skip a beat. This is it. Welcome to my home, Michael said softly, noting Iris's awestruck expression. Home? This looks like a palace, Iris muttered, disbelieving. The gate swung open automatically, revealing a long driveway flanked by meticulously tended gardens. The taxi advanced, and Iris found herself being ushered into a world that seemed plucked from a movie. The mansion rose before them, imposing and majestic, its stone walls and soaring windows gleaming in the afternoon sun. When the car stopped, Iris hesitated, suddenly acutely aware of her disheveled appearance and dirty clothes. Michael, I don't belong here, she whispered, fear evident in her voice. Nonsense, you saved me. You belong here as much as I do, Michael replied firmly. With care, Iris helped Michael out of the taxi, supporting part of his weight as they climbed the entrance steps. Before they could reach the door, it opened, revealing a middle-aged woman with a severe countenance. Her eyes quickly moved from Michael to Iris, visibly narrowing as she noticed the young woman's appearance. Mr. Hamilton, we did not expect you back from work so soon, and I see you have brought company, the woman said, her voice tense. Athena, this is Iris. She saved my life, and she will be staying with us for a day, Michael responded, his tone firm despite his weakness. Iris felt Athena's gaze travel over her body, assessing every stain on her clothes, every strand of hair out of place. The disdain was palpable, and Iris fought the urge to shrink or flee. Mr. Hamilton, surely you are not suggesting that this person stays in the mansion. Think of the risks, the security. Athena began, her tone carefully controlled. Enough, Athena. Iris stays. End of discussion, Michael interrupted, his voice firmer than Iris had heard him speak since the hospital. Reluctantly, Athena stepped aside, allowing them to enter. Iris was immediately engulfed by the grandeur of the interior. The vaulted ceilings, the crystal chandeliers, the artwork adorning the walls, everything screamed wealth and refinement. She felt minuscule and out of place, like a stain on an immaculate canvas. Come, Iris, let me show you where you'll be staying, Michael said gently, noticing her discomfort. As they walked away, Iris overheard Athena mutter, "This will not end well. That beggar will steal everything that's not nailed down." Michael guided Iris through lavish corridors until they reached a room larger than any space she had ever lived in. The king-sized bed, the elegant furniture, the private bathroom. It all seemed surreal. "This will be your room. I hope you'll be comfortable," Michael said, smiling at Iris's awestruck expression. "Michael, it's too much. I don't deserve this," Iris began, at a loss for words. "Iris, you deserve this and more." "Please make yourself at home," Michael said, gently squeezing her shoulder. At that moment, Athena appeared at the doorway, her face a mask of disapproval. "Mr. Hamilton, I need to speak with you. In private." Michael sighed, clearly irritated by the interruption. "Get some rest, Iris. I'll be back soon to see if you need anything." As Michael left with Athena, Iris overheard the housekeeper start. "Sir, I cannot allow that beggar to stay here. It's far too great a risk." Alone in the luxurious room, Iris sat on the edge of the bed, feeling completely out of place. She looked at her dirty hands, her tattered clothes, and then at the immaculate room around her. The contrast was almost painful. "What am I doing here? Maybe Athena is right. Maybe I don't belong in a place like this," Iris murmured to herself, fear and doubt seeping into her thoughts. But then she remembered Michael's kindness, how he had defended her, how he trusted her when no one else would. With a deep sigh, Iris stood up, determined to prove her worth, not just to Athena or Michael, but to herself. "I may not belong here, but I will do my best to help Michael with his health if he needs it," Iris thought, looking at herself in the ornate bedroom mirror. As she steeled herself for the challenges that would surely come, Iris couldn't help but wonder how her life had changed so drastically in just one day. The following morning came with a brightness Iris was unaccustomed to. She had spent the entire night checking on Michael's improved condition. As the sun streamed through the large guest room windows, illuminating every luxurious nook and cranny, she rose, still in disbelief at the softness of the sheets and the comfort of the mattress. Donning the same tattered clothes from the day before, Iris emerged from her room, determined to check on Michael one last time before departing. She walked through the ornate corridors, feeling like an intruder in a world that wasn't hers. "Good morning, Michael. How are you feeling today?" Iris said softly, finding him in the living room. Michael, seated in a leather armchair, smiled as he saw her. "Much better, thanks to you, Iris. Come, sit with me for a bit." Iris hesitated, but eventually perched herself on the edge of a nearby sofa. She noticed Michael looked stronger. His color had returned, but there was still a fragility to his movements that concerned her. "I'm glad you're feeling better. I think it's time for me to leave. You seem well taken care of here," Iris began, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Michael's smile faltered. "Leave? But Iris, I was hoping we could discuss something important." Before Iris could respond, Athena entered the room carrying a tray of tea. Her eyes narrowed as she saw Iris, and she set the tray down with more force than necessary on the table. "Do you need anything else, sir?" Athena asked, completely ignoring Iris's presence. "No, thank you, Athena," Michael replied firmly. "In fact, I'd like to speak with Iris in private. Could we use my study?" Athena exited the room, but not before shooting Iris a warning glance. Michael rose carefully, and Iris instinctively moved to assist him. "There's no need to worry, Iris. I'm feeling much better." "Come, there's something I need to discuss with you," Michael said with a gentle smile. They walked to the office, an imposing room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a large solid wood desk. Michael closed the door behind them and motioned for Iris to take a seat while he sat behind the desk. "Iris, yesterday, you showed a kindness and compassion that I haven't seen in a long time. You saved my life not once, but twice," Michael began, his voice serious. Iris felt her heart quicken. "Michael, you don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone would do." Michael shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. "No, Iris, not everyone would have done what you did. And that's why I need to make you a proposal," he said. Iris straightened in her chair, a sense of apprehension growing in her chest. "What kind of proposal?" Michael took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "Iris, I've always wanted to have a child. I don't have anyone to ask this of, but I've always wanted to be a father." Iris blinked, confused. I don't understand. What does that have to do with me?" "I'm proposing that you be the mother of my child," Michael said, the words rushing out. "Not biologically, of course, but through artificial insemination. I would provide everything, support, education, a home. You and the child would never have to worry about anything ever again." The silence that followed was deafening. Iris felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Her mind was spinning, trying to process what she had just heard. "Michael, Iris stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. I don't know what to say," she said nervously. "I know it's an unexpected proposal, but think about it, Iris. A chance to get off the streets, to have a stable life, to raise a child with every resource imaginable," Michael continued, leaning forward. Iris stood up abruptly, her chair scraping across the polished wood floor. She walked to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens outside, so different from the streets she was used to. "Why me? You barely know me. I'm nobody," she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're wrong, Iris. You're someone with a huge heart. Someone who risks everything to help a stranger. You're exactly the kind of person I'd want to be the mother of my child," Michael answered, his voice thick with emotion. Iris turned to face Michael, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. The proposal hung between them, an offer that could change her life forever. I need to think. It's too much to process all at once," Iris finally said, her voice shaky. "Of course," Michael nodded understandingly. "Take all the time you need, but please consider staying here while you think. There's no need to go back to the streets while you make your decision." As Iris left the office, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions, she couldn't help but wonder, is this real? Or am I about to make the biggest mistake of my life? Iris wandered the mansion's gardens, her slow, pensive steps contrasting with the rapid pace of her thoughts. The scent of roses and the birdsong seemed surreal compared to the harsh reality of the streets she knew so well. She stopped before an ornate fountain, watching her distorted reflection in the rippling water. Michael's proposal echoed in her mind, a promise of a life she had never imagined possible. A home, support, a child to love. Everything I've ever dreamed of. But at what cost? Iris murmured to herself, dipping her fingertips into the water's surface. The ethical implications of the proposal weighed on her conscience. Would it be right to bring a child into the world under these circumstances? She walked to a stone bench, shaded by a centuries-old oak tree, sitting to gather her thoughts. On one hand, there was the promise of security, comfort, and the chance to be a mother, something she secretly longed for, but never thought possible in her situation on the streets. On the other, there was the strangeness of the arrangement, the feeling of selling a part of herself and the fear of the unknown. What if I'm not a good mother? I can barely take care of myself. How can I be responsible for another life? Iris questioned, her hands trembling slightly. But then an inner voice responded, what if this is your only chance to do something meaningful with your life? Iris stood up abruptly, unable to stay still. She began walking through the maze of neatly trimmed hedges, each turn representing the twists in her thoughts. She remembered all the cold nights on the streets, the days of hunger, the despair that consumed her. Michael's proposal offered an escape from that nightmare. But what if it's just another kind of prison, trading my freedom for comfort? Iris murmured, stopping before a marble statue. She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. What freedom? The freedom to starve, to live in constant fear. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the garden. Iris found herself in front of a rose garden, the flowers in full bloom exuding a sweet fragrance. She gently touched a petal, marveling at its softness. In that moment, something inside her solidified. A decision began to take shape. I could give this child everything I never had. Love, security, opportunity. Wouldn't that be a good thing? Iris mused, a determination growing in her chest. She imagined a small hand in hers, an innocent smile, the chance to make a difference in someone's life. With determined steps, Iris returned to the mansion. She found Michael in the library, idly flipping through a book. Upon seeing her, he stood up, clear expectation in his eyes. "Michael, I've thought a lot about your proposal," Iris began, her voice steady despite the nervousness she felt. Michael nodded, patiently waiting for her to continue. Iris took a deep breath, gathering all her courage. "I accept, but I have some conditions," she finally said. The relief and joy on Michael's face were palpable, but he contained himself, realizing that Iris wasn't done. "What are your conditions, Iris?" Michael asked softly, gesturing to an armchair for her to sit. Iris remained standing, feeling she needed that position to maintain her resolve. First, I want to have an active role in creating the child. I won't be just a incubator, she said. Michael nodded vigorously. Of course, Iris. It has always been my intention for you to be a true mother to the child. Second, I want to have the opportunity to study, to better myself. If I'm going to be responsible for a life, I need to be prepared, Iris continued, gaining confidence. Absolutely. I'll provide the best tutors, any course you desire, Michael agreed. Iris hesitated for a moment before presenting her final condition. And lastly, I want to have the option to leave if at any moment I feel this isn't right for me or the child. No reprisals, no pressure. Michael fell silent for a moment, considering Iris's words. Finally, he extended his hand. I accept your conditions, Iris, all of them. You have my word. Iris looked at Michael's outstretched hand, feeling the weight of the decision she was about to make. With one last deep breath, she shook his hand, sealing the deal that would change their lives forever. Then it's decided. Let's do this, Iris said, her voice a mix of determination and apprehension. As she left the library, a new reality beginning to form around her, Iris couldn't help but think, may the future hold something good for all of us. Iris stopped before the mirrored doors of the fertility clinic, her distorted reflection showing a woman she barely recognized. The new clothes Michael had bought couldn't conceal years of life on the streets. She took a deep breath before pushing through the sleek doors of the clinic. The reception was a study in cold marble and stainless steel, as sterile as it was unwelcoming. An impeccably dressed receptionist looked up, her face instantly contorting into a sneer of disgust. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone making it clear she'd rather not have to interact with Iris. "I'm Iris Bennett. I have an appointment with Dr. Stevenson," she mumbled, aware of the hostile stare as the receptionist recognized her name. The receptionist typed her name with perfectly manicured nails, her eyes widening as she read the notes on the screen. A malicious smile formed on her ruby-red lips. "Ah yes, I read your file. You're Mr. Hamilton's beggar. Have a seat over there in the corner, and please, try not to touch anything. We just cleaned and don't want to have to disinfect everything again because of you," she said loudly, not caring who would hear. Iris shrank into the farthest chair, feeling like an animal at the zoo. The cold leather burned through her clothes, brutally reminding her that she didn't belong there. The whispers around her were like stabs, each word cutting deeper than the one before. "My God, they're letting beggars in here now," a woman in pearls hissed to her friend. "I bet she doesn't even know how to use a proper bathroom," the friend replied, not bothering to lower her voice. "Just look at her, she'll probably sell the baby to buy food," another man commented, looking Iris up and down with contempt. Iris sank further into the chair, wishing the ground would open up and swallow her. Each minute that passed was torture, each sidelong glance a stab in her already fragile heart. She began to question every decision that had led her here, every promise Michael had made. Was this better than the streets? After what seemed like an eternity, a nurse appeared, her crisp uniform a stark contrast to Iris's appearance. Her nose was wrinkled, as if she smelled something particularly unpleasant. "Come on, beggar. Let's get this over with before you contaminate the whole place," the nurse called, not bothering to use Iris's name. Iris rose, her legs shaking, and followed the nurse down the gleaming hallways. Each step echoed, seeming to announce her unwanted presence. Staff and other patients moved away as she passed, as if her condition was contagious. In the exam room, the news seemed to have spread, for the nurse tossed a hospital gown at Iris, as if throwing food to an animal in a zoo exhibit. "Put this on. And for God's sake, try not to get it too filthy. Other people will have to wear it after, you know, though I think we're going to have to burn it after you use it." Iris struggled against tears as she changed behind a screen, her hands shaking so much she could barely tie the gown's strings. The nurse watched with a mix of disgust and morbid fascination, as if Iris were some exotic species on display. "So, beggar, how many kids have you had on the streets? I bet you lost count, didn't you?" "Probably don't even know who the fathers are," the nurse began, her tone laced with venom. Iris choked back, shocked by the directness of the cruel question. "I've never. It's not like that. Spare me the sordid details. I've heard every kind of story here. Tell me, can you read? I bet you can barely write your own name," the nurse interrupted, rolling her eyes. The words hit Iris like physical blows, each one eroding a little more of her already fragile self-esteem. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, to explain that she was none of what they thought, that even if she couldn't read, everyone deserved respect. But the words stuck in her throat, choked by the weight of shame and humiliation. Have you ever considered sterilization? It would be a favor to society, you know, preventing more. People like you from reproducing, the nurse continued, her tone falsely sweet. The doctor walked in at that moment, interrupting the nurse's cruel interrogation. He barely looked at Iris as he prepared the equipment, as if she were just another object in the room, not a human being about to undergo a life-changing procedure. Let's get this over with. The sooner we're done, the sooner we can disinfect everything, he muttered, more to himself than to Iris. During the procedure, Iris bit her lip hard, determined not to cry in front of them. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Each impersonal touch, each unspoken word, each sidelong glance was a stab at her already shredded dignity. We'll need to disinfect everything twice. Maybe even throw some instruments away, the nurse muttered to the doctor, uncaring that Iris could hear. Done. Now lay still for 15 minutes, and please, try not to contaminate anything. We have other patients after you, real patients, the doctor announced coldly, snapping off his gloves in a way that made Iris flinch. Alone in the room, the deafening silence broken only by the hum of the fluorescent lights, Iris finally let the tears fall. They streamed silently down her cheeks, forming small pools on the paper-covered pillow beneath her head. What have I done? How can I bring a child into a world that sees me like this? What chance will that child have if everyone judges it before it's even born? She sobbed silently, her voice no more than a broken whisper. The door burst open, and the nurse walked back in, her face a mask of contempt. Time's up, Beggar. Time to head back to the alley you came from. Don't want you getting too comfortable here. Might start thinking you belong in this place. As Iris dressed, shaking and fighting back a fresh wave of tears, she overheard the nurse in the hallway. Call security. We have a beggar here who needs to be escorted out before she steals something. Double check she didn't take anything. Those kinds of people have light fingers, you know, she said. Iris left the clinic feeling smaller than when she had entered. Every look, every word echoing in her mind like a sentence of perpetual condemnation. The future, once so promising, now seemed a cruel joke of fate. As she walked along the sidewalk, she wondered if she would ever be seen as anything more than Mr. Hamilton's beggar. If she would ever escape the prejudice that seemed glued to her skin, like a second layer of grime no shower, no matter how long or hot, could ever wash away. The sun shone in the sky, indifferent to Iris's torment as she wandered aimlessly, her hopes and dreams as broken as the shards of glass she used to avoid on the streets she once called home. The promise of a new life, of motherhood, that had once seemed a beacon of hope was now no more than a cruel mirage in the desert of her existence. A month had passed since the procedure at the clinic, and Iris still carried the weight of that humiliating experience. Now, Iris stared at the pregnancy test with a mixture of fear and hope. Two bright pink lines shone against the white plastic, confirming what her body had suspected for weeks. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind, bringing with it an avalanche of conflicting emotions. It's real. I'm actually pregnant, Iris murmured to herself, her hand instinctively resting on her still flat belly. Part of her wanted to cry with joy, while another part trembled with fear. How can I be a mother when I can barely take care of myself? With shaky legs, Iris left the bathroom and made her way through the mansion's hallways searching for Michael. She found him in his study, looking paler and more tired than usual. The past few weeks had been difficult for him, with frequent doctor's appointments and endless tests that had yet to yield a conclusive diagnosis. Michael? Iris called softly, hesitant to disturb the quiet of the room. He looked up, a tired smile forming on his lips. Iris, my dear, come in, please. Iris approached, the pregnancy test hidden in her trembling hands. She noticed the deep hollows under Michael's eyes, the way his breathing seemed just a little more labored than normal. Are you all right? She asked, the concern evident in her voice. Michael waved a dismissive hand. Just a little tired. The doctors are still running tests, but I'm sure it's nothing serious. What did you want to tell me? Is everything okay? He asked. Iris took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Michael, I'm pregnant. For a moment, Silence reigned in the study. Then Michael's face lit up with a joy Iris had never seen before. He stood up abruptly, swaying slightly, and enveloped her in a tight embrace. "Oh, Iris, this is wonderful. A baby. Our baby," he exclaimed, his voice thick with emotion. Iris felt tears in her eyes, Michael's happiness contagious. "Yes, our baby," she repeated, allowing herself for a moment to share in his joy. Michael released her, holding her by the shoulders and looking into her eyes. "We must celebrate. I'll organize a dinner, invite some friends. I want everyone to know about this blessing in our lives." Iris felt a tightness in her chest. The idea of facing Michael's wealthy friends, of being the center of attention, terrified her. But how could she deny Michael anything when he seemed so happy? "Of course, Michael. It would be lovely," she agreed, forcing a smile. Hours later, Iris found herself standing in front of the mirror in her room, nervously adjusting the dress Michael had bought especially for the occasion. The buzz of voices coming from downstairs was like a menacing hum in her ears. "It's just a dinner, you can do this. You have to do this," Iris murmured to her reflection, trying to convince herself. But an insidious voice in her mind whispered, "Who are you trying to fool? They'll see right through you in seconds." Michael appeared at the door, his face lit by a smile that couldn't quite conceal his fatigue. "You look beautiful, Iris. Ready for the celebration?" he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Iris nodded, unable to form words. Together they descended the stairs toward the dining room. Each step seemed to bring her closer to a precipice. As they approached, the voices hushed, and Iris felt all eyes turn to her. The sudden silence was deafening. Michael, seemingly oblivious to the tension, grinned widely. "Friends, I'd like to introduce Iris, the future mother of my child," he said. Then a middle-aged woman wearing a pearl necklace that probably cost more than Iris had ever seen in her life was the first to speak. "Oh, Michael, how interesting. Where exactly did you two meet?" Iris felt her face burn. Before she could respond, Michael gently intervened. "Iris and I met under unusual circumstances, but she has been an angel in my life. I'm grateful she will be the mother of my child," he replied. The dinner progressed, and Iris had never felt so out of place. Every bite was a struggle, every guest's gaze a stab. The questions were like poisoned arrows, each one aimed at her insecurities. "And you're sure you're ready to be a mother, dear?" one woman asked, her tone sickeningly sweet. "Raising a child is no joke, you know, especially for someone with your street experience." Iris swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. "I'm learning. Michael has been very supportive." The atmosphere in the room grew heavier, and Iris felt like she was suffocating. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, to tell them all that she was more than their prejudices, more than her past. But the words stuck in her throat, choked by fear and shame. Finally, when Iris thought she couldn't take it anymore, one of the guests, a man in an expensive suit and cruel smile, raised his glass as Michael had stepped out to use the restroom. "Her toast to Michael," he announced, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "For your generosity in giving someone so needy a chance. It's truly admirable how you're taking advantage of this situation, isn't it, Iris?" The silence that followed was deafening. Iris felt all eyes turn to her, some curious, others openly hostile. She opened her mouth to respond, to defend herself, but no sound came out. The world seemed to spin around her, and for a moment she thought she might faint. I'm not taking advantage of anyone. I really care about Michael and this baby," Iris finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. But her words were met with muffled laughter and skeptical looks. As the guests continued to chat and laugh, acting as if nothing had happened, Iris wondered if she would ever be accepted in this world. The baby in her womb, which should have been a source of joy and hope, now felt like a weight, a constant reminder of how different she was from everyone around her. And in the midst of it all, when Michael returned from the restroom, Iris couldn't help but notice how he seemed to grow wearier as the night wore on, his breathing more labored, his face paler. A new worry joined the whirlwind of emotions in her chest, making her wonder what the future held for this strange family they were forming. However, the next day, as she walked through the mansion, still thinking about the recent events, Iris found Michael collapsed on the floor, pale as a sheet, a thin line of blood trickling from his nose. Iris's piercing scream echoed through the mansion's hallways, shattering the night's stillness. "Michael! Michael, please respond!" She raced to the bathroom, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Iris, I can't get up," he mumbled, his voice weak and trembling. "Hold on. Help is on the way," Iris whispered, her hands shaking as she dialed for emergency. The minutes that followed were a blur of frantic activity. Paramedics swarmed the mansion, their urgent voices and swift movements starkly contrasting Michael's lethargy. Iris watched, helpless, as they examined and prepared him for transport. "Is he going to be okay?" Iris asked, her voice thick with fear. One of the paramedics gave her a compassionate look. "We'll do our best, ma'am, but he needs immediate hospital care," the professional replied. The ride to the hospital was the longest of Iris's life. Sitting in the ambulance, clutching Michael's cold hand, she wondered how everything had changed so rapidly. Just hours before, they were celebrating the pregnancy, and now, everything was chaos. "Please, God, don't take him. Don't let him pass before meeting his child, before seeing them grow. Please, we need him," Iris prayed silently, her tears falling on their joined hands. But a cruel voice in her mind whispered, "What if it's too late?" At the hospital, Michael was immediately taken for tests, leaving Iris alone in the waiting room, surrounded by white walls and the penetrating smell of disinfectant. The hours dragged on, each minute a torture of uncertainty and fear. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the doctor appeared, his face grave. "Miss Bennett, can we talk in my office? Mr. Hamilton is stable now and will join us shortly." Iris followed him mechanically, her body moving by pure instinct. The office was a study in shades of white and grey, aseptic and impersonal. She sat rigidly in the chair, her fingers interlaced in her lap in a tense grip. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the incessant ticking of the clock on the wall. Minutes later, the door opened again, and Michael entered, supported by a nurse. Iris ran to help him, gently guiding him to the chair beside her. He looked exhausted, the deep circles under his eyes telling the story of his silent struggle. "Michael, how are you feeling?" Iris whispered, holding his hand. He tried to smile, but the gesture didn't reach his eyes. "I've been better, dear. But I'm here, aren't I?" he said, trying to give her hope, although his heart was broken. The doctor cleared his throat softly, calling the attention of both of them. He sat behind his desk, opening a thick folder filled with tests and reports. The air in the office grew even denser, charged with apprehension. "Mr. Hamilton, Miss Bennett, I have the results of your tests, Michael," the doctor began, his voice controlled. Iris felt Michael squeeze her hand tighter. She could hear his quickened breathing, feel the tension in every fiber of his being. The doctor took a deep breath before continuing. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll be direct. Michael, you have leukemia. It's an aggressive type, and it's already at an advanced stage." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Iris felt as if she had been punched in the stomach, all the air being expelled from her lungs. She looked at Michael, expecting to see shock, fear, anything. But his face was strangely calm, almost resigned. "How long?" Michael asked, his voice surprisingly steady. The doctor hesitated. "Without treatment, a few weeks. With aggressive treatment, we could extend that to a few months, maybe a bit longer." Iris felt hot tears streaming down her cheeks. She wanted to scream, to protest against the injustice of it all. How could the universe be so cruel, to give her a chance at a new life, only to threaten to take it away so quickly? There must be something we can do. Some experimental treatment, some surgery, Iris pleaded, her voice choked. Dr. Stevenson shook his head sadly. "Michael's leukemia is particularly aggressive. Conventional treatments may prolong his life, but they don't offer a cure." Michael remained silent, his gaze fixed on a distant point. Iris could feel the weight of his thoughts, the gravity of his situation hanging over them like a dark cloud. She wanted to say something, anything to comfort him, but the words seemed inadequate, insufficient in the face of the magnitude of the diagnosis. "There is one possibility, but it's unlikely, so I wouldn't want you to pin your hopes on it. But a bone marrow transplant could offer a chance of remission, but finding a compatible donor is difficult, and time is not on our side," the doctor continued, his voice cautious. Iris felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. A transplant? That could save him, she asked, her heart pounding. Potentially, but it's important to understand that it's not a guarantee. The process is risky, and given Michael's current condition, there's a significant chance he won't survive the procedure, the doctor replied. The hope that had sprouted in Iris's heart withered quickly. She looked at Michael, searching for any sign of how he was processing all of this. His face was pale, but his eyes had a determined glint. What are the exact odds, doctor? I want any chance to meet my son or daughter, Michael asked, his voice calm but firm. The doctor sighed. Honestly, Michael, the odds aren't good. Even if we find a compatible donor quickly, which is a big if, there's only about a 30% chance of success. And it's more likely that, well, that you won't make it to the transplant and that. You'll pass away before then, he replied honestly. The silence that followed was deafening. Iris felt like she was drowning, struggling to breathe in an ocean of fear and uncertainty. She looked at her still flat belly, thinking of the life growing inside her. A life that Michael might never get to meet. What do we do now? Iris asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor leaned forward, his gaze compassionate. Now we need to act quickly. We'll start the search for a compatible donor immediately. In the meantime, we'll start a regimen of chemotherapy to try to slow the disease's progress. Michael nodded slowly, as if carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And the baby? Will this affect the baby in any way? He asked, looking at Iris. The question caught Iris by surprise. In the midst of all the chaos and fear, Michael was still thinking about the baby, about its future. She felt a wave of love and gratitude so intense it nearly knocked her over. The baby won't be directly affected, unless there are other cases in the family. But even then, it's not something you need to worry about right now. But Iris, you'll need special care during the pregnancy, considering the stress of this situation, the doctor replied. Iris nodded mechanically, her mind spinning with all the implications. How could she focus on her own health and the baby's when Michael was fighting for his life? How could she prepare to be a mother, knowing that Michael might not be there to see their child grow up? We will fight against this. For the baby. For us. I won't give up without a fight, Michael said suddenly, his voice full of a determination that Iris didn't expect. Iris felt fresh tears in her eyes, this time of admiration for Michael's strength. We will fight together. You are not alone in this, she said, squeezing his hand. As they left the office, the reality of their situation weighed on them like a lead blanket. The future, which just hours ago had seemed bright and full of possibilities, was now shrouded in shadows of uncertainty and fear. But there was also a new determination, a resolution to face whatever came, together. We will overcome this, and in the end, this baby will know how strong and brave its father is, Iris thought, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. And as they walked to the parking lot, Iris made a silent promise to Michael and the baby. She would be strong for all of them, no matter what the future held. The weeks following Michael's diagnosis were a whirlwind of treatments, ephemeral hopes and crushing disappointments. Iris watched, helpless, as chemotherapy consumed the man she had come to admire and respect. The master bedroom of the mansion, once a symbol of opulence and comfort, had been transformed into a hospital replica, with medical equipment occupying every available space and the persistent smell of antiseptic hanging in the air. That morning, Iris entered the room with hesitant steps, carrying a breakfast tray she knew Michael would likely not touch. The sound of the heart monitor filled the oppressive silence, its steady beep a cruel reminder of life's fragility. "Michael? I brought your breakfast," Iris called softly, approaching the bed. There was no response. Michael lay motionless, his pale skin contrasting sharply against the white sheets. Iris set the tray down on the bedside table and gently touched Michael's forehead. It was warm, feverish. She grabbed a damp cloth and began to wipe his face, noting with a pang in her heart how his cheeks had hollowed, how his eyes seemed sunken in their sockets. "Please, Michael, you need to fight. For us, for the baby," she whispered, her voice choked. But a cruel voice in her mind mocked, "What if he has already given up? What if you are alone in this fight?" The sound of footsteps in the hallway made Iris straighten up. Athena, the housekeeper, entered the room, her face a mask of cold efficiency. Her eyes swept the scene before her. Michael unconscious, Iris by his side, the tray of untouched food. "No change, I suppose," Athena said, her voice cutting like ice. Iris shook her head, unable to find words. Athena's presence always made her feel small, inadequate. Athena approached the bed, checking the monitors with the efficiency of someone accustomed to dealing with illness. Her movements were precise, almost mechanical, as if Michael were just another object to be tended to in the mansion. "The doctor will come later to adjust the medication. In the meantime, there are other matters we need to discuss, Miss Bennet," Athena informed. Athena's tone promising nothing good, her voice devoid of emotion. Iris felt a chill down her spine. "What matters?" Iris asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Athena turned to face her, her cold, calculating eyes. "With Mr. Hamilton in this state, certain. Changes need to be made in the household," said the housekeeper. Iris felt her heart race. She knew her position in the mansion was precarious, dependent entirely on Michael's goodwill. With him incapacitated, what would happen to her and the baby? "What do you mean?" Iris asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Athena crossed her arms, her gaze piercing. "I mean, Miss Bennet, that if you wish to continue enjoying the hospitality of this house, you will have to make yourself useful." The words hit Iris like a slap. She knew Athena had never approved of her presence, but this was too cruel. The doctors had warned Iris to be mindful of stress from the situation. I don't understand. I have been taking care of Michael. Iris stammered, feeling cornered. Athena cut her off with a brusque gesture. "Tending to Mr. Hamilton is the least expected, considering your situation. But a house this size requires a great deal of work, and with Mr. Hamilton ill, we cannot afford to keep idle guests." Iris felt a wave of indignation rise in her chest. She wasn't an idle guest. She was the mother of Michael's child. But before she could protest, Athena continued, her voice cold and calculating. "Starting tomorrow, you will assist with cleaning the house, preparing meals and any other tasks I deem necessary. Consider it your contribution to your stay here." Iris looked at Michael, still unconscious in the bed, completely oblivious to the conversation taking place. She thought of the baby growing in her womb, of the promise she had made to be strong for all of them. But this was too much. "I'm pregnant. The doctor said I need to rest. That stress, I could lose my baby," Iris weakly protested. Athena cut her off again, her tone making it clear she would not accept arguments. "The stress of finding yourself homeless would be far greater, wouldn't you agree? Besides, a little work never killed anyone. On the contrary, it can be edifying." Iris felt tears burn in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give Athena that satisfaction. She looked at Michael one last time, desperately wishing he would wake up, defend her, put Athena in her place. But he remained motionless, oblivious to the world around him. "Okay," Iris finally said, her voice trembling but determined. "I'll do whatever is necessary for Michael, for the baby." Athena nodded, a cold smile forming on her lips. "Good. We start tomorrow at 6 o'clock sharp. Don't be late." As Athena left the room, Iris sank into the chair beside Michael's bed, feeling the weight of the world upon her shoulders. She looked at the unconscious man in the bed, at her stomach that was beginning to show the first signs of pregnancy, and at her own hands, which would soon be calloused by hard work. "We'll get through this," Iris murmured, more to herself than to Michael. "We have to get through this." But as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the room, Iris couldn't help but wonder if she had made a terrible mistake in accepting Michael's proposal. If the dream of a new life had turned into a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Months later, the sun had barely risen when Iris was awakened by the shrill sound of the alarm clock. Her eyes, heavy with exhaustion, opened reluctantly. She rose with difficulty, her prominent 6-month belly hindering her movements. The guest room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The elegant walls and expensive decor seemed to mock her precarious situation. Iris dressed mechanically, her hands instinctively caressing her swollen belly. "Good morning, little one. Another day ahead, huh?" she murmured softly. A twinge of pain in her back made her frown. "Take it easy, Mama. We need to be strong today." Iris descended the stairs towards the kitchen, each step calculated to avoid stumbling. The cold railing under her fingers, was a constant reminder of how far she was from her former life. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a cruel reminder that Athena was already waiting for her. Entering the immaculate kitchen, Iris found the housekeeper standing rigid as a statue, her cold eyes assessing every move of the pregnant young woman. "You're late," Athena declared, her voice as sharp as a blade. Iris swallowed hard, trying to ignore the morning sickness. "Sorry, Spare me the excuses," Athena interrupted. "There's much work to be done. Start by scrubbing the floor." With a resigned sigh, Iris picked up the bucket and the scrub brush. The weight of the water-filled bucket made her arms tremble, and she had to pause for a moment to regain her balance. She knelt awkwardly, her belly hindering the movement. The cold floor against her knees was uncomfortable, but she knew better than to complain. As she vigorously scrubbed, Iris couldn't help but think about how drastically her life had changed in the past few months. If Michael could see me now, would he approve of this? No, don't think like that. He's up there in his room fighting for his life. You need to fight for the baby, she thought bitterly. The hours dragged on, and Iris felt every muscle in her body protesting. Her belly seemed to weigh a ton, and an uncomfortable ache was starting to form in her back. The strong smell of cleaning products made her stomach churn, and she had to stop several times to contain her nausea. Athena circled the kitchen, supervising the work with hawk-like eyes, occasionally letting out snide remarks about a missed spot or a poorly cleaned corner. "More elbow grease on that corner," Athena ordered, pointing to a spot already scrubbed 3 times. Iris bit her lip, holding back a sarcastic retort. "Yes, Athena," she mumbled, returning to the task. The midday sun was already high when Iris finally finished scrubbing the kitchen floor. Her back was aching terribly, and she could barely stand up. Her knees were red and sore from the prolonged contact with the hard floor. As she tried to get up, leaning on the sink, a sudden sharp pain shot through her belly. Iris gasped, her hands instinctively flying to her stomach. "What now?" Athena asked, her voice laced with irritation. I don't know." "Something's not right," Iris stammered, panic rising in her chest. Ignoring Athena's protests, Iris stumbled towards the nearest bathroom, her heart hammering against her ribs. Each step was agony, the pain in her belly intensifying. She closed the door behind her, her trembling hands trying to calm herself down. That's when she noticed it, a dark red stain spreading on her pants. "No, no, no, please God, not my baby," Iris murmured, terror gripping her. She sat on the toilet, hot tears streaming down her cheeks. "Michael, I need you now," she sobbed silently. The pain in her belly increased, waves of agony that made her gasp. Iris tried to remember everything she had read about pregnancy. This could be normal, right? But this pain, this couldn't be normal. She looked at her shaking, stained hands, unable to think coherently. Then, the bathroom door burst open abruptly, revealing Athena with a look of disgust. Her eyes took in the scene, Iris crying, the visible stain, the young woman's pale, contorted face twisted in pain. "What's going on here?" Athena demanded, her voice as cold as ice. Between sobs, Iris managed to stammer, "The baby. I think I'm losing the baby. We need to call an ambulance." Athena folded her arms, her face a mask of skepticism. "Don't be dramatic. This is normal in pregnancy. You're clearly exaggerating," the housekeeper said. Iris looked at Athena in disbelief, the pain in her belly intensifying. She wanted to scream, shake the woman in front of her, make her understand the gravity of the situation, but all she could manage was a groan of pain. "Please, something's wrong, I can feel it. We need to go to the hospital now, Michael, he can't take me. Due to his condition, please, help me," she pleaded, her voice broken with fear. The housekeeper let out an exasperated sigh, as if dealing with a petulant child. "This just seems like another of your tricks to avoid work. There will be consequences," she simply said, before leaving the bathroom. Iris looked at her belly, gently caressing it, as if she could protect the baby with just the touch of her hands. "Hold on tight, little one. I'll find a way to get to the hospital by myself. Mommy will take care of you. We'll be okay," she whispered, tears still streaming down her face. But as the pain intensified and the bleeding continued, Iris couldn't help the terrifying thought, what if it's too late? What if I lose the only good thing I have left? What if I lose Michael, and the only memory I have of him? Time seemed to drag on as Iris tried to leave, alone and terrified from the cold bathroom. Every second was an eternity of fear and pain. She could hear Athena's distant voice, but it didn't seem like the housekeeper was calling for help or going to do anything to assist. "Please come back, help me," Iris muttered, not knowing if she was pleading with Athena, the doctor, or fate itself. "Don't leave me alone now." And as she waited, Iris prayed as she had never prayed before, begging for a miracle that would save her baby and the new life she so desperately wanted to build. The silence in the bathroom was broken only by Iris's muffled sobs and the incessant ticking of the clock on the wall. The pain in her belly had intensified, turning into waves of agony that made her gasp. The bleeding showed no signs of slowing down, staining her clothes and the white-tiled floor. With her heart pounding against her ribs, Iris realized she could no longer wait for Athena or a miracle. She needed to act, and quickly. With determination born of desperation, Iris forced herself to her feet, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to knock her down. "Come on, Iris. You can do this. For the baby. For Michael," she muttered to herself, gripping the sink to steady herself. But an insidious voice in her mind whispered, "What if it's too late? What if you're only prolonging the inevitable?" With faltering steps, Iris opened the bathroom door. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before her, the ornate walls spinning in her blurred vision. The expensive paintings and porcelain vases that had once impressed her now seemed to watch her with indifference, silent witnesses to her struggle. She could hear Athena's distant voice coming from somewhere in the mansion, but she couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. She knew she couldn't rely on the housekeeper's help. Iris leaned against the wall, leaving a red trail with her bloodied hands as she slowly made her way towards the staircase. Each step was agony, the pain in her belly pulsing in sync with her racing heart. She could feel the warm liquid trickling down her legs, staining the expensive carpet beneath her feet. The metallic smell invaded her nostrils, making her stomach churn. "Don't give up now. You're almost there." "Just a few more steps," Iris panted, her vision darkening at the edges. But her treacherous body seemed to have other plans, trembling violently with the effort of staying upright. With each step, Iris felt as if she were walking on shards of glass. Her muscles screamed in protest, exhausted from the forced labor, and now battling against the pain and fear. She could feel the cold sweat trickling down her back. The world around her seemed to sway dangerously, the walls moving like waves in a stormy sea. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, Iris reached the top of the stairs. The imposing marble staircase, which had once impressed her with its grandeur, now seemed an insurmountable obstacle. The steps stretched below her like a steep and dangerous mountain. Down there she could see the front door, her only route of escape, her only chance to save her baby. The distance seemed impossible to overcome in her current state. "It's just stairs. You've gone down these thousands of times. You can do it," Iris tried to convince herself, gripping the railing with all her strength. But as she took the first shaky step, a new wave of pain hit her, so intense that she nearly lost her balance. Iris bit her lip so hard she tasted the metallic tang in her mouth. She couldn't scream, couldn't alert Athena. She had to do this alone. With fierce determination, she began her descent, one step at a time, her legs shaking with the effort. Each movement was a battle against gravity and her own weakened body. The ticking of the clock in the hallway seemed to mock her, reminding her that every second lost could mean the difference between life and death for her baby. Iris could feel the panic rising in her chest, threatening to suffocate her. She fought to keep her breathing under control, knowing that succumbing to fear now would be her undoing. Halfway down, and Iris felt as if she had run a marathon. Each movement sent waves of agony through her body, and the world around her seemed to sway perilously. She could hear her own ragged breathing, interspersed with low moans of pain she could no longer contain. The railing, her only anchor in this sea of pain, was slick with sweat and the blood from her hands. "Just a little further. Please, hold on. For both of us," she pleaded with her exhausted body. But her desperate plea seemed to fall on deaf ears, both her body and the universe conspiring against her. That's when it happened. A misstep, a moment of weakness, and Iris felt the world spin. The railing slipped from her sweaty fingers, and she found herself falling helpless down the stairs. Time seemed to slow as she tumbled down the marble steps, her body ricocheting painfully off the hard surface. Each impact was like a hammer blow, reverberating through her bones and sending waves of agony through her entire being. In her last moments of consciousness, Iris had a crystalline thought. Michael, forgive me. I tried. I really tried. And then the world went dark. Iris lay motionless at the foot of the stairs, a fragile and broken figure against the cold marble. The blood began to slowly spread around her, forming a scarlet halo that contrasted dramatically with the immaculate white floor. Her hair, once carefully arranged, was now spread like a fan around her head, some strands sticking to her pale and sweaty face. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of Athena's steps, still oblivious to the tragedy that had just unfolded. The ticking of the clock continued, relentless, marking the precious seconds that drained from time. And as Iris lay there unconscious and bleeding, the future she had so desperately fought to build hung by a thread, as fragile as the life that may still have been pulsing in her womb. The silence in the bathroom was broken only by Iris's muffled sobs and the incessant ticking of the clock on the wall. The pain in her belly had intensified, turning into waves of agony that made her gasp. The bleeding showed no signs of slowing, staining her clothes and the white-tiled floor. With her heart hammering against her ribs, Iris realized she could no longer wait for Athena or a miracle. She needed to act, and quickly. With determination born of desperation, Iris forced herself to stand, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to bring her down. "Come on, Iris," she murmured to herself, gripping the sink to balance herself. "You can do this. For the baby. For Michael." But an insidious voice in her mind whispered, "What if it's too late? What if you're only prolonging the inevitable?" With faltering steps, Iris opened the bathroom door. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before her, the ornate walls spinning in her blurred vision. The expensive paintings and porcelain vases that once impressed her now seemed to watch her with indifference, silent witnesses to her struggle. She could hear Athena's distant voice coming from somewhere in the mansion, but she couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. She knew she couldn't count on the governess's help. Iris leaned against the wall, leaving a red trail with her bloodied hands as she slowly advanced toward the stairs. Every step was agony, the pain in her belly pulsing in sync with her racing heart. She could feel the warm blood trickling down her legs, staining the expensive carpet beneath her feet. The metallic scent of blood invaded her nostrils, making her stomach churn. "Don't give up now," Iris gasped, her vision darkening at the edges. "You're almost there. Just a few more steps." But her treacherous body seemed to have other plans, trembling violently with the effort of staying upright. With each step, Iris felt as if she were walking on shards of glass. Her muscles screamed in protest, exhausted from the forced labor, and now battling against the pain and fear. She could feel the cold sweat running down her back, mingling with the blood that stained her clothes. The world around her seemed to sway dangerously, the walls moving like waves in a stormy sea. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, Iris reached the top of the stairs. The imposing marble staircase, which had once impressed her with its grandeur, now seemed an insurmountable obstacle. The steps stretched below her like a steep and dangerous mountain. Down there she could see the front door, her only escape route, her only chance to save her baby. The distance seemed impossible to overcome in her current state. "It's just stairs," Iris tried to convince herself, gripping the railing tightly. "You've gone down this thousands of times, you can do it." But as she took the first faltering step, a new wave of pain hit her, so intense that she nearly lost her balance. Iris bit her lips so hard that she tasted the metallic tang of blood in her mouth. She couldn't scream, she couldn't alert Athena. She needed to do this alone. With a fierce determination, she began to descend, one step at a time, her legs trembling with the effort. Every movement was a battle against gravity and against her own weakened body. The ticking of the clock in the hallway seemed to mock her, reminding her that every second lost could mean the difference between life and death for her baby. Iris could feel the panic growing in her chest, threatening to suffocate her. She fought to keep her breathing under control, knowing that succumbing to fear now would be her undoing. Halfway down, and Iris felt as if she had run a marathon. Every movement sent waves of agony through her body, and the world around her seemed to sway dangerously. She could hear her own labored breathing, punctuated by low groans of pain that she could no longer contain. The railing, her only anchor in this sea of pain, was slippery with the sweat and blood of her hands. "Just a little more," she pleaded to her exhausted body. "Please, hold on. Both of us." But her desperate plea seemed to fall on deaf ears, both her body and the universe conspiring against her. That's when it happened. A misstep, a moment of weakness, and Iris felt the world spin. The railing slipped from her sweaty fingers, and she found herself falling helpless through the air. Time seemed to slow as she tumbled down the marble steps, her body ricocheting painfully against the hard surface. Each impact was like a hammer blow, reverberating through her bones and sending waves of agony throughout her being. In her last moments of consciousness, Iris had a crystalline thought. "Michael, forgive me. I tried. I really tried." And then the world went dark. Iris lay motionless at the foot of the stairs, a frail and broken figure against the cold marble. The blood began to slowly spread around her, forming a scarlet halo that contrasted dramatically with the pristine white floor. Her hair, once carefully arranged, now fanned out around her head, some strands clinging to her pale, sweaty face. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of Athena's footsteps, still oblivious to the tragedy that had just unfolded. The ticking of the clock continued, relentless, marking the precious seconds slipping away like sand in an hourglass. The mansion, with all its opulence and grandeur, seemed to hold its breath, as if even the walls could feel the weight of the fate that had just been sealed. The rays of sunlight streaming in through the tall windows appeared to avoid touching the fallen figure, as if fearful of disturbing the tragic scene. And as Iris lay there unconscious and bleeding, the future she had so desperately fought to build hung by a thread, as fragile as the life pulsing within her womb. The promise of a new life, of redemption and hope, now seemed as distant as the stars, lost in a sea of pain and uncertainty. The gardener, a middle-aged man named Frank, was pruning the bushes near the mansion's entrance when he heard a dull thud from inside. Intrigued and concerned, he dropped his tools and cautiously entered through the front door. What he saw made his blood run cold. Iris, the young pregnant woman he had occasionally seen around the gardens, was lying motionless at the foot of the stairs in a growing pool of blood. "My God! Mrs. Iris, can you hear me?" Frank exclaimed, running towards Iris. There was no response. Frank knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he checked her pulse. Weak, but present. Frank shouted for help, his voice echoing through the empty hallways of the mansion. Where was everyone? Where was that stern housekeeper who always looked at him with suspicion? There was no time to waste. With shaking fingers, he grabbed his phone and dialed for emergency. "What is your emergency?" The calm voice of the operator came through the receiver. "I need an ambulance immediately. There's a pregnant woman down. She's bleeding heavily," Frank shouted, panic evident in his voice. As he relayed the address and details of the situation, Frank kept his eyes fixed on Iris. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her breathing was shallow and irregular. He could see bruises starting to form on her exposed skin, silent witnesses to the violent fall. "The ambulance is on its way. Do not move the patient. Keep her warm and monitor her breathing," the operator instructed. Frank nodded, even though he knew the operator couldn't see him. The minutes that followed seemed like an eternity. Frank removed his jacket and gently placed it over Iris, trying to keep her warm as the operator had instructed. He kept talking to her, pleading for her to wake up, to give any sign that she could hear him. But Iris remained motionless, her frail body seeming even smaller against the cold marble floor. At last, after what felt like forever, the sound of sirens cut through the air. Frank ran to the door, frantically waving to guide the paramedics. They rushed in swiftly, carrying equipment and a stretcher. Within seconds, they were by Iris's side, assessing her condition with professional efficiency. Female, approximately 25 years old, pregnant, about 24 weeks, one of the paramedics rapidly reported. Multiple contusions, possible left arm fracture, heavy bleeding. "BP's dropping," the other paramedic informed, his voice tense. "We need to move her now." With quick, precise movements, they transferred Iris onto the stretcher. Frank watched, feeling helpless. The sound of the heart monitor filled the air, its irregular beeping a constant reminder of how precarious the situation was. "Is she going to be okay?" Frank asked anxiously, as the paramedics prepared to take Iris away. One of them shot him a grave look. "We're doing everything we can. Every second counts now. The journey to the ambulance seemed to happen in slow motion. Frank followed closely, his heart pounding in his chest. He saw Athena appear at the top of the stairs, her face a mask of shock, and was that guilt he saw in her eyes? There was no time for questions. Iris was being loaded into the ambulance, and every moment was crucial. "I'm coming with her," Frank declared, climbing into the ambulance before anyone could protest. One of the paramedics nodded curtly. "Stay there and don't get in the way. We might need information." The doors closed and the ambulance took off, its sirens piercing the morning air. Inside the vehicle, it was a flurry of activity. The paramedics worked feverishly, hooking up monitors, checking vitals, prepping medications. "BP keeps dropping, starting emergency transfusion," one of them announced, his voice tense. "We have signs of premature labor," the other informed, his expression grave. Frank watched, feeling utterly useless. He wanted to help, to do something, anything. But all he could do was watch as the paramedics fought to save Iris and her baby. The sound of the heart monitor seemed to fill the entire space. Its irregular beeps a constant reminder of how fragile the line between life and death was. "Hold on tight, both of you." "Don't give up now," Frank murmured, his hands clasped in silent prayer. As if in response to his words, the monitor began emitting a shrill alarm sound. "We're losing her. The mother's not going to make it," one of the paramedics shouted. "We need to get to the hospital now." The other was already on the radio, his voice urgent. The ambulance accelerated even more, weaving through the morning traffic. Frank could feel every turn, every sharp break, but his eyes were fixed on Iris. Her face, once so full of life and determination, was now pale and motionless beneath the oxygen mask. How had things come to this? "How long until the hospital?" Frank asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 minutes. "Maybe less if we can get through this traffic jam," the driver replied. 3 minutes. They could seem like an eternity or pass in the blink of an eye. Frank watched the paramedics work tirelessly, their hands moving with a swiftness and precision that only comes with years of experience. They injected medications, adjusted equipment, constantly monitored Iris and the baby's vital signs. Fetal heartbeats dropping. "We need to stabilize them now or we could lose them both," one of them announced, his voice tense. The other paramedic was already preparing another injection. "I'm administering medication for the baby. It might be our only chance if we have to do an emergency delivery." Frank felt his heart constrict. Emergency delivery? But it was too early. The baby was too small. He wanted to ask more, to understand what was happening. But he knew that every second of distraction could cost precious lives. "We're almost there. Prepare for transfer," the driver shouted from the front seat. The paramedics nodded, already moving to position the stretcher for a quick exit. As the ambulance made the final turn into the hospital's emergency entrance, Frank couldn't help but think of Michael. The man was fighting his own battle against death, unaware of the drama unfolding. How would he react to know that he might lose not only his own life, but also Iris and the baby he so longed for? "We're here," the driver announced, the ambulance doors opening even before the vehicle came to a complete stop. A team of doctors and nurses was already waiting, their faces serious and determined. In a matter of seconds, Iris was transferred from the ambulance to a hospital gurney. Frank barely had time to blink before she was wheeled away, disappearing through double doors toward the trauma area. He stood in the emergency entrance, feeling lost and powerless. "Sir, you came with the patient? We need some information." A nurse gently approached him. Frank nodded mechanically, his eyes still fixed on the doors Iris had vanished through. "Yes, I was there when it happened." As he followed the nurse to fill out forms and provide what little information he had, Frank couldn't help but wonder, did I do enough? Did I get her here in time? And as the chaos of the emergency room continued around him, he silently prayed for Iris, for the baby, and for the uncertain future that awaited them beyond those hospital doors. Minutes later, the mood in the operating room was tense. Doctors and nurses moved quickly around Iris, who lay unconscious on the operating table. The sound of the machines monitoring her heart filled the room, reminding everyone of the gravity of the situation. The strong smell of disinfectant mingled with the metallic scent of blood, creating a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. The lead surgeon began operating with great care. His hands moved swiftly, but with precision. He knew he didn't have much time. Beads of sweat trickled down his forehead as he worked, aware that 2 lives depended on his skills. "We need to be fast. Every moment counts now, or we'll lose them both," he said quietly, focused on his work. A nurse wiped the sweat from his brow, nodding silently. She watched the monitors, her tense expression reflecting the seriousness of the situation. When the doctor finally reached the baby, he grew concerned. The situation was more dire than it should have been. The complications from Iris's fall were evident, and the doctor knew they were racing against time. "The baby needs to be delivered now or it won't survive," he said urgently, his voice firm but laced with worry. The team responded immediately, moving in synchronicity like a well-rehearsed orchestra. Within seconds, the doctor delivered the baby. It was tiny, almost fitting in the palm of his hand, and wasn't moving or crying. The baby's skin had an alarming bluish tinge. Everyone in the room fell silent, waiting and hoping for the baby to respond. The air seemed to have been sucked out of the environment, the tension palpable. "It's not breathing on its own," the pediatrician said, immediately beginning to assist the baby's breathing. His experienced hands worked swiftly, performing resuscitation maneuvers on the minuscule body. "Come on, little one, you can do it. Fight," he murmured, still tending to Iris. After what seemed like an eternity, a faint, almost inaudible cry filled the room. It was more of a whimper than a cry, but it was a sign of life. Everyone released the breath they'd been holding, relieved. But the danger wasn't over yet. The baby was still critical, its life hanging by a thread. "Get the baby to the NICU right away. It's going to need full support. Every second counts," the pediatrician ordered, his voice urgent. As one team rushed out with the baby, the doctor working on Iris turned his full attention back to the patient. She was still losing a lot of blood, and he needed to act quickly to save her. Hours later, Iris woke up in a hospital room. The soft light streaming in through the window contrasted with the intense pain she felt. But what troubled her most was the confusion and emptiness. She looked around the sterile room and then down at her now empty belly. Suddenly, reality hit her like a speeding train, and hot tears began to streak down her pale cheeks. "My baby, where's my baby?" she said softly, her voice weak and hoarse. But the room was empty, and no one answered. The silence was deafening, broken only by the constant beeping of the monitors. A nurse entered the room, her steps soft on the floor. She checked the machines and adjusted Iris's IV with efficient movements. When she was done, she looked at Iris kindly, her eyes full of compassion. "How are you feeling, dear?" she asked affectionately, her voice soft and soothing. Iris tried to sit up, but a wave of sharp pain made her lie back down. She felt like every inch of her body was screaming in protest. "My baby, please tell me where my baby is," she repeated, her voice trembling and laden with emotion. The nurse gently held Iris's hand, her touch gentle and comforting. "Your baby was born very early, dear. He's in the neonatal ICU receiving special care now. The doctors are doing everything they can for him, but it's a delicate situation," she explained softly. Iris felt her heart clench painfully. She wanted to see her son, hold him, protect him. The idea of her baby alone fighting for his life was almost unbearable. "When can I see him?" she asked, tears flowing freely down her face. "As soon as you're a little stronger. For now you need to rest and recover. Your baby is in good hands, Iris. He's a fighter just like you," the nurse replied, her voice gentle but firm. Iris closed her eyes, feeling completely helpless. She thought of Michael, how he would react to all of this. Did he already know? Was he okay? The last image she had of him was in his bed, weak and pale, battling leukemia. As if reading her thoughts, the nurse said, "There's one more thing you need to know, Iris. It's about Mr. Hamilton." "Michael." Her tone of voice made Iris open her eyes, alarmed. A sense of dread began to form in her stomach. Iris felt her heart race, the monitor next to the bed reflecting her agitation. "What happened? Is he okay?" The words came out rushed, laden with fear. The nurse hesitated for a moment, her eyes filling with sadness. "Mr. Hamilton was also admitted shortly after your arrival at the hospital, Iris. His condition suddenly worsened. He's in the ICU now, fighting for his life." Iris felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her. Her baby fighting for his life on one side of the hospital, Michael dying on the other, and her stuck in that bed, unable to do anything to help. It was too much to bear. I need to see them, please. I need to be with them. And what if it's the last time? Iris said, trying again to get up, ignoring the stabbing pain. Her voice broke on the last sentence, the fear of losing Michael becoming almost tangible. The nurse gently kept her from getting up, her hand firm but caring on Iris's shoulder. Iris, you just went through a serious surgery. Your body needs to recover. The best thing you can do now is rest and get strong, for them. Soon you'll be able to say goodbye to Mr. Michael. Iris leaned back against the pillows, feeling terrified. She looked out the window, seeing the blue sky outside, so in contrast with the turmoil of emotions inside her. How could the world keep turning when everything in her life was crumbling? Tell me they'll be okay, please, Iris pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. But she could see the answer in the nurse's eyes. There were no guarantees, no promises. The nurse squeezed her hand gently. We're doing everything we can, Iris. I can't promise, given the severity of both their situations. Now, try to get some rest. You're going to need all your strength in the coming days. As the nurse left the room, Iris closed her eyes, letting the tears flow freely. She felt alone, scared, and powerless. All she could do was wait and pray that her baby and Michael would pull through. But a part of her knew with a painful certainty that life would never be the same. Please, please let them be okay. I can't lose them. Not now, not like this, she whispered to the empty room, her voice choked with sobs. And with those tormenting thoughts plaguing her mind, Iris fell into a restless sleep, her dreams filled with crying babies, beeping heart monitors, and the image of Michael slowly fading away, like sand slipping through her fingers. Hours later, the sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway woke Iris from her restless slumber. She opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented, before the reality of her situation hit her again. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows in the hospital room. The door opened and the doctor entered, his face grave and weary. Iris felt her heart race, anticipating bad news. Mrs. Bennett, the doctor began, his voice soft but urgent. We need to talk about Mr. Hamilton's condition. Iris forced herself to sit up, ignoring the pain in her abdomen. Is it Michael? What happened? The doctor pulled a chair closer to the bed, his eyes meeting Iris's with a mixture of compassion and concern. Michael's leukemia is progressing rapidly. His body is not responding to the treatments as we had hoped. He needs a bone marrow transplant immediately, or he won't survive more than a few days. Iris felt the world spinning around her. The doctor's words echoed in her mind, each one carrying the weight of a sentence. But what about the donor? Weren't you looking for one? Unfortunately, we did not find a compatible donor in time, the doctor explained, his voice heavy with regret. Time is running out for Michael. Iris felt tears burning her eyes. Then, what can we do? There must be something, anything. The doctor hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. There is one possibility we haven't considered before. Your baby. Iris blinked, confused. My baby? But how? The umbilical cord stem cells, the doctor explained. They have the potential to be used for transplant. We'd like to test the baby's compatibility with Michael. Iris's mind reeled with this new information. Her baby, so small and fragile, could be the key to saving Michael. It was a ray of hope amidst the darkness, but it also brought with it a new set of fears and worries. Is it safe? For the baby, I mean, Iris asked, her voice trembling. The doctor nodded slowly. The test itself is safe, but if the baby is compatible and we decide to proceed with the transplant, there are risks to consider due to the prematurity. Iris closed her eyes for a moment, trying to process everything. When she opened them again, there was a fierce determination in her gaze. Do the test and make sure my son stays safe, but if there's a chance to save Michael too, we have to try. He's his father, she said firmly. The doctor nodded, rising quickly. I'll give the orders immediately. We'll run the tests as fast as possible. As the doctor left the room, Iris whispered to herself, Please let him be compatible. Please give us this chance. The following hours passed in a blur of anxiety and waiting. Iris could barely stay still in the bed, her body tense with anticipation. She alternated between silent prayer and talking to her baby, as if she could somehow influence the outcome of the tests through sheer force of will. Finally, the doctor returned, clutching a folder of results. His face was a mask of professionalism, but Iris could see a glimmer of something in his eyes. Hope, concern. She couldn't decipher it. "The results have come back, Mrs. Bennet," he said, his voice calm but laced with tension. Iris felt her heart leap. "And? My baby? Is he compatible?" she asked, and the doctor nodded slowly, a small smile forming on his lips. "Yes, the baby is compatible with Michael. It's almost a miracle, considering the odds." Iris let out a sob of relief, tears streaming down her face. It was the news she had so desperately hoped to hear. But before she could give in fully to joy, the doctor continued, his expression growing serious once more. "However, Mrs. Bennet, it's important that you understand the risks involved. Your baby is extremely premature and fragile. Collecting the stem cells from the umbilical cord doesn't present any direct risks, but the stress of the procedure may be too much for such a tiny newborn," he explained carefully. Iris felt her heart clench. The hope that had blossomed moments earlier was now stained with fear. "And Michael, what are his chances?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor sighed heavily. "Michael's condition is critical. Without the transplant, his chances are... well, there are no chances. He won't survive if we don't act as quickly as possible. With the transplant, there is hope. But the procedure itself is risky, given his weakened state." Iris found herself faced with an impossible decision. On one side, her baby, so small and vulnerable, fighting for every breath. On the other, Michael, the man who would be her child's father, the man who had given her a chance at a new life now on the brink of death. I need a moment. Can I see my baby? And Michael?" "Before I decide, I need to see them," Iris said, her voice choked. The doctor nodded understandingly. "Of course, I'll arrange for you to be taken to the NICU and then to the ICU where Michael is. But remember, time is of the essence." Minutes later, Iris found herself being wheeled down the hospital corridors in a wheelchair. Her heart was racing as they approached the NICU. When she finally saw her son, so tiny and fragile in his incubator, surrounded by tubes and monitors, Iris felt her heart shatter. "Oh, my little one, you are so beautiful and so strong, so brave," she whispered, placing her hand on the incubator glass. A nurse approached gently. "He's fighting so hard, Mrs. Bennet. Your son is a true warrior." After some precious moments with her baby, Iris was taken to see Michael. The sight of him pale and motionless in his hospital bed, machines keeping him alive, was almost too much to bear. She held his cold hand, remembering how he had been strong for her, how he had given her hope when she had none. "Michael, I don't know what to do. Please give me a sign," she murmured, tears falling onto their joined hands. But Michael remained still, the only sound in the room the steady beeping of the monitors. Back in the waiting room, Iris found herself faced with the most difficult decision of her life. The doctor waited patiently, his presence a silent reminder of the urgency of the situation. Iris closed her eyes, reliving the moments with her baby and with Michael. She thought of the life Michael would want with his child and the future they could lose. She thought of her son, so small, but so full of strength. If we do this, you'll do everything to protect my baby, right?" Iris began, her voice trembling. The doctor nodded solemnly. "We will do everything in our power to minimize the risks to your son, Mrs. Bennet. You have my word." Iris took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. With a heavy but determined heart, she looked into the doctor's eyes. "Then, do it. Do the transplant. Save Michael, and protect my son. Save my family," she said, tears streaming down her face. While the doctor hurried out to begin the preparations, Iris sank into the chair, the weight of her decision crushing her. She looked up at the ceiling, a silent prayer on her lips. "Please," she whispered to the universe, "please let me have made the right choice. Please protect my baby and save Michael." And so, with her heart torn between hope and fear, Iris waited, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of her newly formed family. Minutes later, Iris found herself sitting in an uncomfortable chair in the waiting room, waiting to learn the outcome of her son's and Michael's surgery. The young woman's eyes were fixed on the double doors leading to the intensive care unit. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to echo in her ears, each second dragging like an eternity. Her hands shook slightly as she clutched them in her lap, fighting the urge to bite her nails. A habit she had abandoned years ago, but now threatened to return. "Please," she murmured repeatedly, like a mantra. "Please let them be okay." The constant movement of nurses and doctors entering and exiting the intensive care unit kept Iris in a state of permanent alert. The hours ticked by, and Iris watched with growing anxiety as the medical team came and went. Each time the doors opened, she straightened up, expecting news, only to sink back into her chair when no one approached. She noticed with concern that the doctors' faces seemed more tense with each passing, their voices hushed and urgent as they exchanged rapid words she couldn't make out. A young resident rushed out of the intensive care unit, almost running towards the elevator. Minutes later, he returned with a bag of blood, brushing past Iris without even noticing her. Her heart raced. Who was that blood for? Michael? The baby? The uncertainty was eating her up inside. "They're going to be okay, they have to be okay," Iris repeated to herself, trying to convince herself. But an insidious voice in her mind whispered, "What if you made the wrong decision? What if you lose them both?" When the doctor finally emerged from the double doors, hours after the start of the procedure, Iris felt her heart stop. The doctor's face was grave, tired, and for one terrible moment, she feared the worst. He approached slowly, and Iris rose on shaking legs, bracing herself for whatever he was about to say. "Mrs. Bennett," the doctor began, his voice solemn. "The procedure." Iris held her breath, her entire world suspended in that moment. Suddenly, a small smile formed on the doctor's lips. "Was a success. Both Michael and the baby are stable." Iris felt her legs buckle, and the doctor quickly helped her sit back down. Tears of relief and joy streamed freely down her face as she took in the news. They're going to be okay?" she asked between sobs. The doctor nodded, his smile widening. "We still have a long road ahead, but the prospects are very good. Michael is responding well to the transplant, and your son has shown incredible strength." In the weeks that followed, Iris witnessed a gradual but steady transformation. Michael gained color and strength with each passing day, his periods of consciousness becoming longer and more frequent. Her son, too, continued to surprise the doctors with his resilience, gaining weight and strength at a steady pace. Weeks after the procedure, Iris found herself sitting between Michael's and the baby's beds, which had been moved into the same room. Michael was awake, propped up by pillows, his eyes fixed on the small bassinet where his son slept peacefully. Iris watched them both, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. Suddenly, Michael turned to Iris with tears in his eyes. "I never thought we'd make it here, Iris. When I proposed that crazy deal to you that day, I never imagined it would end up like this. I was alone, sick, and desperate for a family. What I received was so much more than I ever could have hoped for or deserved. You came into my life like a hurricane, defying every expectation I had. At first, you seemed like a desperate young woman, but you showed me a strength and kindness I didn't know still existed in the world. You gave me hope when I was about to give up." Michael looked at the sleeping baby, and a gentle smile formed on his lips. "And this little miracle, our son, he's not just my heir, Iris. He's the living proof of the love and compassion you brought into my life. He saved me not just physically, but gave me a reason to fight, to live. You too saved me, in every possible way. You gave me a family, something I thought I'd never have. You taught me what truly matters in life. It's not money, it's not status, it's this unconditional love I feel for the two of you. I promise you here and now that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that love, of this second chance you've given me. I will love you both with every fiber of my being, with every breath I've been granted. Iris, you and our son are my world now, and I am eternally grateful for that. Thank you, Iris. Thank you for not giving up on me, for fighting by my side, for giving me a family. I love you, and I will love our son, more than I ever thought possible to love someone," Michael said, looking deeply into Iris's eyes, which were filled with tears, as she squeezed Michael's hand, deeply touched by his words. She smiled softly, her voice full of emotion. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? Who would have thought that casual encounter on the street would bring us here? I love you too, Michael. The three of us together, We can face anything." As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow over the hospital room, Iris reflected on the incredible journey they had been through, from strangers to an unlikely family, bound together by adversity and love. She knew there would still be challenges ahead. Michael's recovery would be long, and their son would need special care. But looking at the two men who had become her world, Iris felt a deep certainty that together they could overcome anything. "We made it. Against all odds, we really made it," she thought, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in months. And as the baby opened his eyes, his tiny fist clenching around Michael's finger, Iris knew this wasn't the end of their story, but just the beginning of a new chapter filled with possibilities and love. 6 months had passed since those anguishing days at the hospital. Michael's mansion, once cold and impersonal, now overflowed with life and joy. The baby's cries and Iris's laughter echoed through the halls, bringing a new energy to the place. Michael, fully recovered from leukemia, embraced his second chance at life with enthusiasm. He had transformed not just physically, but in spirit too. The cold, calculated man had given way to a loving father and devoted partner. Every morning he woke up grateful for another day with his unlikely family. Little Thomas, as they had named the baby, grew strong and healthy. The doctors, who had initially feared for his survival, now declared him a medical miracle. His bright eyes and contagious smile were a constant reminder of the battle they had won together. Iris blossomed in her role as a mother and partner. She found a purpose and happiness she had never thought possible in the days when she roamed the streets. Her difficult past now only served to strengthen her determination to provide the best for her family. The housekeeper, Athena, could not adapt to the new dynamics of the house. A few days after Iris and the baby's return from the hospital, she approached Michael to resign. Her deep-seated pride and prejudices prevented her from accepting Iris as the new lady of the house. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton," she said coldly, "but I cannot continue working under these new circumstances. I cannot work with this woman." Michael, outraged by her prejudice, accepted her resignation, fiercely defending the mother of his child. When Iris learned of it, she surprised everyone by asking to speak with Athena before she left. In the office, Iris faced the woman who had mistreated her so badly. "Athena, I understand your feelings, but I want you to know that, despite everything, despite all the harm you almost caused me and my son, I forgive you. I hope that one day you can see beyond appearances and find peace, and most importantly, I hope you don't allow the evil in your heart to harm another innocent ever again. But I know the first step towards your change is for me to give you my forgiveness," she said in her calm, steady voice. Athena, visibly shaken by Iris's unexpected compassion, left in silence, leaving behind not just her job, but her preconceptions too. Her departure marked the definitive end of Michael's old life and the beginning of a new era for the family. Frank, the gardener whose quick action had saved Iris on that fateful day, was promoted. Michael, grateful for the intervention that had helped save not only Iris, but indirectly himself, made sure to acknowledge Frank's loyalty and compassion by rewarding him financially and morally for his good heart. The mansion, once a symbol of loneliness and empty wealth, became a home in the truest sense of the word. The gardens, carefully tended by Frank, were now the setting for family picnics and sunny afternoons, with Thomas learning to take his first steps. Michael decided to use his wealth and influence to make a difference. Inspired by Iris's story, he founded an organization to help people living on the streets, offering not just shelter, but opportunities for a fresh start. Iris became a passionate spokesperson for the cause, sharing her story to inspire others. On a peaceful afternoon, as they watched Thomas play in the garden, Michael turned to Iris with eyes full of love and gratitude. "Who would have thought that day on the street would change our lives forever?" he reflected, holding her hand. Iris smiled, remembering the incredible journey that had brought them here. "Life has a funny way of surprising us," she replied, echoing the words she had said at the hospital. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the scene, the Hamilton-Bennett family, as they were now called, embraced, grateful for the love, life, and second chances they had been given. They knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, united by the strongest bond of all, the unconditional love born from the most unlikely of circumstances. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing heartwarming stories nearly every day. Don't miss the next amazing narrative that is about to appear on your screen. We are immensely grateful to have you here with us. Now, you can click on the links appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, full of valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.